everyone, welcome to Crafty Garden and part 1 of my new Fleece to FO series. My name is Stephanie and I'm the host of this crafty podcast where I talk about knitting, spinning, weaving, sewing, all of the crafty things. You're joining me in Vermont where I live with my husband, our 2 dogs, and our cat. So today I have a new series to announce. This is part 1 in a series of videos that will show my own personal journey of processing my first 2 fleeces from sheep or fleece to finished object. Part 1 of this series will serve as an introduction so that new viewers can learn about who I am as a spinner, the fleeces I plan to feature, how I'm going to process them, and what I want to make with the finished handspun yarn. I will also talk about how I've sorted and washed the 2 fleeces and show you some photos and videos that I took along the way. I'm making this series so that I will have a photo and video journal of my first time processing, spinning, and then knitting, weaving, or possibly even crocheting my fleeces into finished objects. This series isn't necessarily meant to be a tutorial. It's not a tutorial, but I do hope that people will find it useful and possibly even inspiring. I've broken this video up into 2 parts. The first part I'll talk about the first fleece that I bought, which was at Vermont Sheep and Wool in 2017. And the second half I'll talk about the second fleece that I bought, which was at Rhinebeck, New York Sheep and Wool, also in 2017, which was this past fall, if you don't know that. If you're interested, I'll have an outline for this video down below with linked timestamps, so you can watch this video as it is, or if you prefer, you can check out the outline and jump to different sections that you're interested in. So first up, I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself as a spinner. Mostly, I just want to warn you that I'm still a beginner and that any advice I give should be taken with a grain of salt. I've only been spinning for just over a year now, and that means that I'm still learning and growing as a spinner. I know next to nothing about sheep and their wool prior to becoming a spinner, so this journey has been a real learning experience for me. And I've already learned so much from the little bit of work I've put into my first 2 fleeces. It's a lot of work. That being said, I have made a ton of yarn in this short amount of time, and a fair number of projects that I'm quite proud of. I've also frogged a few too. My Holy Chevron shawl was my first major project, and I wear it all the time. I'm also very pleased with how my first pair of handspun socks turned out, and I wear those quite often as well. The last major project I've made with handspun is my Great Granny Square blanket, and technically I'm still working on that, but I'm getting really close to being finished now. I'm currently knitting my second pair of handspun socks for a handspun box of socks, a SPAKAL, so a spin along, knit along, that I'm hosting. If you're interested, please feel free to follow me on Ravelry. My handle is CraftyGardenSews, and that's the same for Instagram as well. So I'm CraftyGardenSews on Instagram and Ravelry, and I have a group called CraftyGardenPodcast, and I also have a Instagram account just for the podcast called CraftyGardenPodcast, where you can follow me to find out about new videos and things like that. So if you're interested in learning more about my handspun projects, the ones that I just mentioned, you can feel free to check out my other more podcast style videos where I talk about them in more detail. So the last thing I thought I'd mention is that the way I process my fleeces might be different than the way that someone else does it. In fact, I'm positive that it's different than the way someone else does it, because there's quite a few different methods, and different methods are good for different types of fleeces. So I'd like to say that it's okay if what I'm doing is different than what you've done or someone else has done. That's okay. There's more than one way to get things done, and I'm sure that I will likely change and improve what I do as time goes on. Okay, so in just a second, I'm going to turn you over to some pre-recorded and edited photos and videos. So I've taken some photos and did a little voiceover for both of the fleeces, and the videos I have edited as best as I can. I took little videos over time, so since this past fall, when I went to the 2 festivals and bought the fleeces, I have been doing little bits of scouring, washing, and processing as well since then. So what I've done is just taken a bunch of little videos and put them together in a way that makes sense, and I've edited out a lot of stuff that is, I feel like, no longer necessary to show, because I have through trial and error figured out what worked best for me. So I just tried to show you that instead of some of the stuff that didn't work out so well. So I hope you enjoy that, and I'll go ahead and turn you over to this next segment. The first fleece I bought was at Vermont Sheep and Wool Festival in 2017. Here's a photo of the fleece still in the bag. The fleece came from a ram lamb, and it was about 1.5 pounds. His name was Buddy. I reached out to the farmer, and this is a photo of Buddy you can see right here in the center front. And I have a few photos of his fleece. This is it all laid out. And here's a few photos of the crimp and the locks. Some of the different colors that you can see. Buddy had quite a few natural colors in his wool. Here's another section of color. And then I've got some laid out all together, so you can see the different lengths. And this is me laying out, getting it prepared for washing. And I used this mesh material to wash it one of the times I washed it this way. Here's another time where I used baskets. And here's a photo of those mesh pinned bags that I made, and my cat who loved the fleece. Yeah, so I think what I'm going to do is just separate the wool into sections of color. So I'm going to try and do like the lightest kind of off-white, then the more gray, and then the brown and black, and try and just separate it into at least 3 colors. I'm getting ready to wash my Fen fleece. This is the darkest section of color. It's sort of this chocolatey brown color. And I've been carefully removing all of the second cuts and the tags. Now, second cuts are these short little bits where the person who sheared the sheep went back over a section. You don't want those in your finished yarn. And the tags are a nice way to say poop. So clumps of poop or just caked on dirt and things that you don't want in your finished yarn. So this is all the waste. And then I just carefully laid this out. I'm going to take a piece of that mesh fabric that I used to make sausage rolls, and I'm going to lay that on top of here. I've already used this method to wash a little bit of my Corriedale fleece that I got at Rhinebeck. So I'm going to try it with the Fen fleece and see how it works. But I'm going to lay some of that mesh on top of here to kind of help keep it together. Because unlike my Corriedale, the Corriedale has a lot of lanolin and it's really blocky and they kind of just want to stick together. This doesn't have nearly as much lanolin. It's not sticky at all. And yeah, so I'm a little bit more worried about it wanting to move around. So I'm going to put that piece of mesh on top, hopefully to kind of keep it in place. Okay, here we are with the Fen fleece. I talked a little bit about how I wanted to put the mesh on top of to kind of keep this in place. So I did, I kind of, hi Tux. I kind of just tucked it in, you know, a bit like you would, I don't know, tuck in a child for bed or something. I just kind of tucked under the edges and stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and put it into the large plastic container, and I thought I would show you just what that looks like and just how dirty the water is. So this is the first wash. Okay, so this wants to float on top, so I'm gonna have to push it down, and I'm doing this with one hand, so you have to bear with me. Okay, there we go. So the little plastic bin is starting to sink into the larger plastic bin. This looks like it's kind of holding it together well. And I'm just gonna have to carefully start pushing the wool into the water. My cat is so curious. He's like pawing at me. What are you doing? All right, yeah, you don't want to agitate it too much, but it's okay just to gently press it down into the... What do you want, cat? I smartened up and put a lid on the container. I watched Blue Mountain Handcrafts videos last night, and she uses metal containers to help hold the heat. Yeah, I don't have a metal container large enough for this bin method. So yeah, I'm just putting the lid on it to help hold in the heat, and I'm gonna leave it for 10 to 15 minutes, come back, and then dump out the water. I changed and adapted the way I washed Buddy's wool over time as I learned what worked and what didn't work, but I always used Unicorn Power Scour and hot water from the tap. I would wash it twice and then rinse it once at least, and then towel dry it, squeezing out the extra water and then allowing it to air dry. I found the best method that worked for me was a combination of the baskets and the mesh bags that I made. Together they would hold the wool and prevent it from coming out of the holes in the baskets and just keep it nicely together while it was washing. These hand cards were the first fiber prep tool that I purchased, and I decided to make rollags with Buddy's fleece. I also decided that I would intentionally keep all of the different natural colors separate so that I could form a sort of gradient. Here you can see a few of the different colors that I hand carded from Buddy's fleece. In this last photo, you can see the first sample that I ever made. And you can also see how these locks transform into this beautiful heathered gray color. I really love how this knit up. The second fleece I bought was at my first trip to the New York Sheep and Wool Festival, also known as Rhinebeck. I looked at all of the fleeces, and I spent a lot of time deciding which fleece I was going to buy, but in the end I went with this 3-year-old 6.5 pound Corriedale fleece. Hey guys, so I'm out here on my porch and I've laid my Finn fleece out. This is the Corriedale fleece that I bought at New York Sheep and Wool, also called Rhinebeck. And I did my best to lay it out, but it's pretty sticky and it doesn't want to quite lay out as nicely as my Finn fleece did. When I took that apart, the Finn fleece looked just like it came off the sheep. But I just thought I'd show you a little close-up. This is my first time looking. You hear the geese in the background and my neighbor yelling at his dog. Anyways, this is the first time I've got to look at some of the pieces that were in the middle of the bag, and it's really beautiful. And I thought I'd also point out that there's something called yoke on the fleece, and this is a little bit of that right there. You can see those kind of yellow deposits, and I read up a little bit about it, and that's perfectly normal and fine, and they wash right out when you scour your fleece. So this is a little before, and I'm going to start scouring and washing little bits of the fleece. Okay, so I have one of these baskets, and I filled it with a little bit of the unwashed fleece, and I'm going to take this basket and then do something very similar to what Knitting the Stash did. And I'm sorry, I can't remember what her first name is right now, but I've just you know, taken enough. I think think that's plenty. Hopefully it's not too much in there. And then I'm going to scour it and yeah, pretty much do the same thing that Knitting the Stash did. I'm going to use the Unicorn Power Scour that I got at New York Sheep and Wool. Started making piles, so here I have a nice sort of clean looking section, still unwashed. And here I have a pretty dirty section, and there's a lot of variation. Some of these pieces are just slightly dirty, and some of them are very, kind of filthy. So I'm gonna sort of just make 2 piles here. I still have more wool that I'm sorting. I have a huge bag here, so I'm just started making piles. And what I'm gonna do is just try to sort them roughly into, the relatively clean sections and the dirty sections, and then further sort them later. But this stuff is really, really beautiful. Here's the Corriedale fleece soaking in the tub. I've got it in a plastic bin full of hot water and Unicorn Power Fiber Wash, Power Scour. And all I've done is just simply sink it into the tub and then carefully pushed the wool down so that the wool wouldn't float on top. And I'm just gonna let it sit here probably, 10, 15 minutes. It's recommended that you don't let it sit too long because then the lanolin can reattach itself to the wool. And you can see that a little bit of dirt is coming out, but there's really not a lot of dirt in this fleece. So I will show you when it's when I take it out. Okay, here is the unwashed fleece, completely unwashed fleece. I've got them in 2 bins, and I have it in a mix of hot tap water and boiling water. I'm going to put the lid on my plastic bin. I have just a little plastic bin. I'm going to put the lid on it and then cover it for 15 minutes to 20 minutes. Okay, here's the fleece after about 20 minutes, and it already looks, the color's already changed. So I'm going to take these out of the water, carefully drain them, and then I'll have to take a bucket to remove all of the water from the tub, and then, or the plastic bin inside of my tub. And then I'm going to have to rinse it. So I will take these out and I'll show you the next step. Okay, so I took the fleece out after the first wash, and this is what the water looks like after 1 wash. Okay, here we are after the second wash. The water is pretty clear. I have a glove on because I did use boiling water, so you do want to have something to protect your hands. These gloves are made for dyeing, not for boiling water, but they are protecting my hands anyways. So I thought I'd show you. The water is a lot clearer. It's a little bit cloudy. Hopefully I got a lot more of the lanolin out. There was a ton of lanolin still on the fleece. Even though it looks cleaner, it still had a lot of lanolin. So I'm going to take it out and see if the lanolin is mostly removed. This is the rinse. So I just wanted to show you real quick, and I'm going to go ahead and put the top on the container that I'm using, this plastic container, and let it sit for about 15 to 20 minutes. There was a lot of lanolin and yolk spots in my Corriedale fleece, and to remove it, I found that I needed to use multiple washes and rinses. I used Unicorn Power Scour until I ran out, and then I used some Dawn dish soap. After the wool was clean and dry, I started drum carding it. For part 2 of this series, I will show you how I drum carded this fleece and how I hand card my fin fleece into rollags. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!